The night his parents kicked him out with nothing but a suitcase was also the night his fate quietly shifted. By the next morning, he was a millionaire. Curious who he is and what happened on that fateful night? Stick with us for this gripping story. Andrew wasn't the type to give up easily, but from the outside, most people would have pegged him as lazy, mooching off his parents, stuck in some fantasy about this thing called a dream. He used to study mechanical engineering at MIT. Smart, logical, meticulous, and once seen as someone with a bright future. But in his junior year, after pulling nearly 2 all-nighters in a row to finish a 3D game prototype for an indie design competition, he dropped out. No warning, no discussion, just sent in a withdrawal email, then moved into a shared apartment with 3 other code-obsessed friends. From that moment on, to his parents, especially his dad, Gary, Andrew officially became a walking disappointment. After the pandemic, the group of friends fell apart. Freelance work was unstable and the indie game scene shrank. Andrew couldn't afford rent anymore. He called home, voice low, saying he'd only stay for a few months. 3 tops, maybe 6. 3 years went by. Gary, his father, was a former Marine, the kind of man who got up at 5 a.m., ran 5 miles, washed the car with soapy cloths, and organized everything by color. He believed that if you weren't earning money, you had no business living in someone else's house. I'm not against passion, but if your passion doesn't feed you, it's a damn delusion. That's what he told Andrew straight to his face, right in the middle of dinner. Linda, his mom, just sighed and scooped more mashed potatoes onto his plate. She loved him. But in that quiet, careful way, love in secret, love without pushing back. You know how your dad is, she would whisper while doing the dishes. He just wants what's best for you. What kind of wanting the best involves calling your kid a freeloader parasite right in the living room? Andrew didn't respond. He never argued with his dad. He just took it, in that quiet way kids do when they don't want to break the family apart. Silent, disappearing into his room, living his own life under a shell of endurance. During the day, Andrew shut his door, buried himself in code, fixing bugs, testing AI, tweaking messed up textures. No one knew what he was working on. No one asked. Occasionally, Gary would walk by, glance in, and curl his lip. Still alive, or just playing with your little toys? At night, Andrew worked part-time at a pizza shop 9 miles from home. Night shifts, 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. He never told anyone. Not out of shame, but because he didn't want Gary using it as proof that he was finally doing real work. His paycheck got split in 2. One part went toward paying for licensed software, the other was saved for parts. Each month he bought a new piece, RAM, then an SSD, then a new graphics monitor. The machine he used to make games was cobbled together from 4 broken-down rigs. Every night, like clockwork, Andrew dropped his empty pizza bag, opened the garage door behind the house, and got to work. The garage smelled like motor oil and sawdust. No AC, sweltering, but it was the only safe space in the house. No mockery, no interruptions, no questions. Once, Linda walked in with a cold water bottle. She stood silently watching him solder circuit boards, then turned and left without a word. But the next morning, that same water bottle was back on the table. Through all the silence, Andrew kept grinding. The game wasn't done, but it was close. One small map was running smoothly. An NPC that reacted to player behavior, a basic menu. Not much, but it was real. After every night shift, he stopped by the gas station and bought a lottery ticket. Just one. Usually random numbers. Some nights he forgot whether he even bought one. It wasn't hope. It was a strange form of entertainment, a little corner of delusion he allowed himself. Someone once said, poor people don't buy lottery tickets because they think they'll win, but because for 5 seconds imagining they did is the only time they feel free. Andrew never thought he'd win. But he kept buying them anyway. He had no idea that one random ticket, bought after a shift, stuffed in a flour-dusted pocket, would be the thing to flip his entire life. On the very night Gary, the father who was supposed to be the backbone of the family, would toss him out with nothing but an empty suitcase and a command that couldn't be taken back. Andrew couldn't quite remember when the garage became the only place in the house where he could actually breathe. Maybe it was when Gary moved all the car tools up to the attic. Or maybe it was the night his mom quietly left a bottle of water by the door and walked away without saying a word. The garage started out with just a folding table. But piece by piece, it grew into something else. Like it built itself. An old monitor picked up at a flea market, a tray for parts made from a cookie tin, a tangle of power cords tied up with a bread bag twist. No one asked. No one cared. And no one ever came in. That garage used to be where Gary kept his car tools. But after he retired and switched to driving a new pickup, most of it was left to gather dust. Andrew never asked for permission, and he wouldn't have dared call it his space. He just slowly claimed it, corner by corner. A plywood desk from Craigslist, a busted desk lamp held together with zip ties, a wobbly swivel chair salvaged from the tech school's junk pile. Nothing was perfect, but it was enough to call a workshop. He always came in with hands covered in cornmeal and the smell of oil from the pizza shop. First thing, shoes off at the door. Then a quick wipe of the desk with a damp cloth so dust wouldn't stick to the circuits. After that, he'd power up his laptop, connect it to the larger monitor with a frayed HDMI cable. Next to him, a small toolbox sat open, soldering iron, screwdrivers, tweezers, and a tangle of mini cables. Some nights, he tweaked the game's UI, adjusting the backlight hue for night scenes. Other nights, he soldered a tiny bridge to hook up extra RAM to the main board. Every task went unseen, unacknowledged. But Andrew tackled each one like his life depended on it. What he feared most was his dad finding out. So every receipt for parts, from a $15 thermal pad to a nearly $400 GPU, was shipped to a temporary address under his old friend Josh's name. Josh agreed, even though he'd moved out of state. Every time Josh visited his mom, he'd stuff the receipts and packaging into a brown paper bag and leave it behind the dumpster by the post office. Andrew would pick it up without being seen. Inside the garage, every piece of gear was hidden behind cardboard boxes labeled plumbing tools. On the surface, nothing gave it away, just an old drill and a rusty box of nails. In case Gary ever walked in, there'd be nothing worth noticing. But no matter how carefully Andrew hid things, Gary always had a way of making the air feel thick with just one sentence. Once, he picked up a bank statement Andrew had left on the kitchen counter. Saw a $198 charge from a hardware site. Didn't ask directly. Just said, flat and dry, "Another big investment in your groundbreaking empire, huh?" Another time, when Andrew put a pizza box in the fridge with his name on it, Gary tapped the fridge door and said, "If your night job pays enough for pizza, it should cover the electric bill too." Linda stood between the two of them like a tightrope walker. Some days she pretended she didn't hear anything. But sometimes she'd pack a portion of stir-fried meat into a plastic container and leave it outside Andrew's door before he got home. No note, no question about whether he was hungry, just left it there and walked away. One night, Andrew got back close to 2 a.m. The container was still there, ice cold. He picked it up, opened it, then closed it again. Didn't eat. But the next morning, he washed it, dried it, and left it exactly where she'd placed it. There wasn't a clock in the garage, but Andrew always knew when to stop. Not because he was tired, but because it was around 3 a.m. The time Gary might randomly come down for water or to check the locks. Andrew would shut off the desk lamp and pack everything up in the exact same order. Cables coiled just right. Laptop closed and angled precisely. Cleaning cloth folded in half. The garage returned to its default state, dusty, dull, empty. Like no one had ever dared to dream there. Only the swivel chair sat slightly off-center. A fresh scratch marked the edge of the desk, and a few particles of dust still floated in the space where the light used to be. The garage used to be the quietest place in the house. Until that night. The night the metal door stopped being a barrier and became an entry point for a storm. Andrew was soldering a misaligned pin on a mini circuit board when he heard the front door slam. Less than 10 seconds later, cold yellow light from the kitchen swept under the garage door. Then came Gary's voice, calm but razor sharp. "Andrew. Out here." Andrew didn't move. His fingers still held the soldering iron a few millimeters above the board, eyes unblinking. But his heart was pounding. Gary entered without knocking, holding a crumpled receipt and a half-torn box. The receipt bore the logo of that electronics store, the one where Andrew had bought the graphics card 3 weeks ago. $387.96. For a piece of plastic, to stick into that piece of crap machine. For what? You think money falls from the damn ceiling? Andrew set the soldering iron down, trying to stay calm. I saved for 3 months. Didn't use anyone's money. Didn't use anyone's money. Gary smirked. The electric bill? The internet? Food? Hot water? That bed you sleep in? Whose money is that, huh? Andrew swallowed hard. I just need time. You've had 3 years. Gary roared. 3 damn years holed up in this corner like some lunatic, while everyone else is out working, building families, living like adults. And you? You play with toys and think you're some kind of genius. Andrew stepped back as his father raised his hand, but he didn't hit him. Instead, Gary yanked the power cord from the monitor. The screen went black. Then he slammed the keyboard onto the concrete floor. The sound of it shattering hit Andrew like a punch to the chest. This crap isn't your future. It's just your hiding place. Your excuse not to live in the real world. Useless garbage. Andrew lunged to protect the equipment box, but Gary grabbed it, threw open the garage door, and hurled it into the yard like a sack of trash. The box burst open, parts sliding across the wet grass. A cold wind swept in. You live here because of me. Not to waste time on this crap. You're not a kid anymore. If you want to keep living in fantasy, get out. Now. Andrew stood still, eyes fixed on the equipment box lying out in the yard. Inside it was nearly a year's worth of late shifts, quiet hours, lines of code, and late-night designs. Now all of it scattered and bare on the ground. He said nothing, just turned and walked back into the house, up the stairs 1 step at a time. His room was just as it had always been. Small, cramped, cluttered with old books and leftover camping gear from college. He opened the closet and pulled out the old suitcase, the one his mom had given him for his 25th birthday, for when you go to some conference or something. He started packing. Jeans, t-shirts, a notebook, an old pair of sneakers. 3 years worth of living, packed down in 15 minutes. Everything else, a wall poster, a few game character figurines, a family photo, he left behind. A soft knock at the door. Linda. She didn't come in, just placed a paper bag at the threshold. There's some bread and water. It's cold out. Make sure you wear something warm. He didn't look up, just said quietly, Thanks, Mom. She stood there a moment longer, then walked away. No one said anything else. When Andrew came down the stairs with the suitcase, Gary was already waiting at the front door. Arms crossed. No anger, no yelling. Just pointed at the gate. Get out of my house, now. There was no room for apologies. No parting words. No last-minute father-son moment to hold on to. Andrew walked past him without looking back. The door slammed shut behind him. That night, it didn't rain. But the wind was brutal, sharp, skin-cutting cold. Andrew stood on the porch, one hand dragging a suitcase, the other holding a backpack. The equipment box still lay in the yard, covered in grass and grime. He walked over and picked up each piece, not out of regret for the money, but because he didn't want to leave a single trace behind. Everything left from those 3 years in that house now fit into his hands. And Gary, the same man who once taught him how to pitch a tent, how to change a flat on the roadside, had wiped it all away in a single night. The gate clicked shut behind him. Andrew pulled his suitcase across the patchy lawn, lit dimly by the orange wash of the street lamps. The wind slipped down his collar, cold and damp. It wasn't raining hard, just a misting drizzle, landing on his shoulders like a quiet reminder. This night didn't belong to anyone. He walked along the empty street. Familiar houses sat quiet behind drawn curtains, glowing faintly under the blur of old yellow lights. Each step echoed with the dull clack of suitcase wheels bumping over uneven pavement. That rhythm, slow, repetitive, stretched across block after block like a bad soundtrack to a silent film. After nearly half a mile, Andrew pulled out his phone. His hands shook from the cold and from what he was about to do. Something he hadn't even considered in 3 years. Ask for a place to sleep. The first person he called was Josh. Andrew. Josh's voice answered, groggy but warm. What's up, man? It's so late. Where are you? I just got kicked out. I need a place to crash tonight. Josh exhaled, the sound of a seatbelt rattling against a chair coming through the line. I'm driving cross-country with Emma, remember? From Colorado back to San Diego. We're in the middle of the damn desert right now. No way I can get to you in time. Andrew nodded, even though Josh couldn't see him. Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Are you okay? What happened? Later. I'll try a few more people. The call ended. Andrew kept dialing. A former coworker from the pizza shop, now with a newborn and a wife recovering. Not a good time. Someone from college, just moved, place still a mess. Another, once a close friend, currently on a work trip in Florida. By the fifth call, Andrew stopped. His hand dropped to his side, phone brushing against his thigh. No one was to blame, but no one was there. The chill from the pavement had started to seep through his shoes. He turned toward the distance, toward a faint green glow under an old sign. Rest Point Truck Stop, open 24H, the only place still lit at this hour. Andrew stepped inside the small shop, picked up a cold-cut sandwich, a bottle of water, and paid with his debit card, scraping the last few $100s he had. The cashier didn't ask anything, didn't even look him in the eye. Outside, on the side of the stop, there was a row of metal benches with no backrests. Andrew sat in the middle one. The seat was cold. Rain clung to his back. He didn't eat right away, just rested the sandwich on his lap and stared out at the empty parking lot. The trucks sat like tired beasts, silent and still. The wind picked up. A white RV rumbled past, engine growling, then disappeared into the dark. No one knew he was sitting there. No one cared. For the first time, Andrew truly felt it. He didn't belong anywhere. No home. No one. Nothing waiting ahead. Everything Andrew had ever called his own, his bedroom, the garage, the half-finished game, the rig he'd built piece by piece, had either been packed up, smashed, or thrown away. All of it now sealed behind a locked door. He thought about his mom. Maybe she was lying in bed, wide awake, too afraid to text, too afraid to come out when he was being kicked out. Maybe tomorrow morning she'd quietly slip something into the trash bag, like she always did. He thought about his dad, the look on his face when he tossed the equipment into the yard. The finality in it, like he was taking out broken junk. No hesitation, no pity, no confusion. Andrew unwrapped the sandwich, took a bite. It was cold, tough, and the meat tasted a little off. But he chewed and swallowed, mechanically. Not because he was hungry, but because he didn't know what else to do. There was no one to talk to, no place to go back to, no plan, no game, not even a line of unfinished code to anchor his mind. He lowered his head, rested his forehead on his knees, arms hanging loose by his sides. Across the empty lot, distant engine noise echoed faintly. The space around him was cold, vast, and completely indifferent to his presence. That night, Andrew didn't check his phone, didn't scroll through apps, didn't wait for a message. It was the moment he, for the first time, truly understood what it meant to hit bottom. Not because he was broke, but because every point of support had been pulled out from under him. The wind slowly settled. The truck stop grew eerily still. Andrew stayed there, eyes closed, head resting against the damp concrete wall. No calls, no texts, no plan, just a half-drained phone lying on his lap, still and useless. He opened his eyes, reached for it. Not because someone might have reached out, not because there was anything to check, but because his hands needed to do something. Just one meaningless habit. His fingers slid across the screen, opening the lottery app he'd used nearly every week since his pizza shop days. An old app, basic interface. Each time he bought a ticket, just one, he'd save the numbers there. Never expecting anything. Just a coin toss with the kind of luck he'd never had. This week was no different. One ticket, bought 2 days ago while waiting for a brick oven pizza. 12 lonely numbers sitting there. He tapped check results. The screen lit up. Winning numbers, 08, 13, 27, 31, 42, 49. He looked down at his numbers, then back up, stopped breathing. 08. Match, 13, match 27, match 31. Also a match, 42, 49. Every single number matched, not one off. Andrew didn't blink. He stared at the screen like blinking might erase it. Like maybe he was hallucinating. His hand started to shake. He hit refresh, weak signal. A few seconds passed. The screen reloaded. Same result. Identical. He opened the browser, typed in the official Powerball site. For the first time all week, every letter went in without a typo. The results were clear. 6 numbers. Not a single one off. Jackpot, $71,000. Lump sum option before tax, $41 million. Estimated post-tax payout, $29.3 million. His heartbeat stuttered, throat dry. His eyes blinked rapidly, like trying to force his brain to catch up with what it was seeing, but it couldn't. No smile, no scream, just numb. The half-eaten sandwich slid off his lap. He didn't pick it up. He just sat there, phone still in his hand like he was holding a live grenade that hadn't gone off yet. He opened his crossbody bag, rummaging through the mess of crumpled papers and receipts. Pulled out the lottery ticket, thin printed stock, edges curled, held it up under the flickering fluorescent light of the truck stop. Checked every number, every position, one by one, all matched, no mistake, no miss. Suddenly, Andrew felt colder than the wind outside. A chill ran from the base of his skull down his spine. He looked around. No one was there. No one saw him. No one knew that this 30-year-old guy, sitting at a truck stop with a beat-up suitcase, was holding a slip of paper that could change his life forever, and no one to share it with. He should call someone. But who? Josh was somewhere in the desert, mid-road trip. His mom, still trapped behind that wall of silence. His dad, probably sleeping peacefully, thinking he'd just set his son straight. Andrew set his phone down on the bench, bent forward, hands over his head. Not from exhaustion, but because he genuinely didn't know what to do next. His mind felt like it had taken a bullet. Not pain, just total disorientation. Winning the lottery. That phrase had always been a joke, a quiet little fantasy to soften the edge of an exhausting shift. Now it was real, and reality had never felt more hollow. No one saw him win, no hand on the shoulder, no laugh, no shout of joy, no hug. Just an empty parking lot, dim lights, and a crumpled ticket in his hand. A ticket that gave him everything. At the exact moment, he had no one to tell. He looked up at the sky. The rain had stopped. The wind had settled. No longer freezing, but not warm either. Just like this moment, too big to celebrate. Too heavy to feel like relief. Andrew stood up slowly. He slid the ticket back into his wallet, more carefully than he'd ever handled anything. His hands were still shaking, but his steps began to carry weight. He didn't know where he was going, but at least he had something now. Not hope. Something more solid than that. A truth no one else knew, no one could touch, no one could take. It was his alone. And in that moment, that was enough. As the sun began to rise, the first light cut sideways through the truck stop sign. Andrew was still on the bench. The shock had settled, but everything still felt hazy, like early morning fog. He stood, joints stiff from sitting too long. One hand clenched around his wallet. Inside it, the lottery ticket folded neatly in half, fragile and sacred. The first thing was to find a bank that opened early. Andrew pulled up the Maps app, picked the biggest branch nearby, and caught the first bus of the day. He showed up in a damp jacket, suitcase dragging behind him, looking like someone homeless asking for a loan. But when he asked, "I'd like to open a secure personal account to receive lottery winnings," the entire room seemed to skip a beat. A few verification calls, some paperwork. Then the branch manager came out personally and led him to a private office. From there, everything started to move faster. Andrew was walked through the official state lottery website, filled out the winner's claim form, and scheduled a legal appointment with the central office representative for the following week. That night, Andrew checked into a hotel room, quiet, unnoticed like a shadow. No one knew who he was, and that, somehow, brought him peace. The next morning, following instructions from the lottery's website, he made his way to a law office in downtown Boston, one that specialized in jackpot winners. The lawyer was a middle-aged man, efficient, asking only what was necessary. If you want to avoid problems, I'd recommend setting up an anonymous trust. No real name on any public record. No contact info traceable back to you. Andrew just nodded. Do it. No second thoughts. In less than a week, the paperwork was done. The trust was named Valise 49, a name the lawyer came up with offhand, but to Andrew it felt strangely fitting. Valise, French for suitcase. 49, the last number on the ticket. When the money officially hit the trust's account, Andrew didn't buy a car, didn't book a trip. The first thing he did was buy a new laptop, similar specs to his old build, but way more powerful. Then he found a small apartment in the southern suburbs of Boston. One bedroom, a simple kitchen, old wood floors, but quiet, no questions, no one behind him. For the first few days, he just slept for hours. And every time he woke up, he wasn't sure if it was still a dream. By the fourth day, he set up his rig again, recovered the old code from the external hard drive, the one thing he'd grabbed before leaving home. Over 60% of the project was still unfinished. Some parts were a mess, riddled with bugs. But he didn't feel discouraged. Each chunk of code was like a familiar scar. He knew he could stitch it back together. The name for the game came without hesitation: Exit Garage. Not because he wanted to spell it out, but because it was a quiet signal, a nod to the night he walked out of that garage with nothing but a suitcase and 2 hands. In the new apartment, there were no deadlines, no father's voice barking down the hall, no mother's quiet shadow passing by, just the steady clack of a keyboard and the hum of a cooling fan. Andrew worked every day, morning to night. No audience, no applause, just the work. Quiet, but clear, like someone relearning how to exist from scratch. The official build of Exit Garage went live on Steam on a Tuesday afternoon. No announcement, no trailer, no marketing campaign, just a single line of description. 1 person, 1 night, 1 way out. The first week was quiet. A few random players left positive reviews. The game was slow, dark, full of metaphors. Some said it hurt in a way I can't explain. Others just wrote, I saw myself in it. Everything changed on day 11. A well-known streamer named Lemo, over 6 million subscribers, played Exit Garage during a late-night stream. He'd planned to review it for 10 minutes. Instead, he played for 3 hours straight. No skipping, barely any commentary, just 1 sentence, halfway through. I don't know who made this, but that person's definitely slept on the street before. The next morning, Andrew woke up to over 1,200 emails, 9 interview requests, and 1 investment proposal. The game shot up to top 3 most shared indie of the week. Download demand on the demo was so high, the hosting company issued a traffic overload alert. Andrew didn't take any interviews, didn't post an update. He just quietly registered a new business. A tiny studio in Boston. He hired 2 developers, 1 UI artist, and a part-time QA tester. The name of the studio, Night Valise. That suitcase from that night. The only thing that followed him. Not to be used, but to remind. The following week, Exit Garage got a limited physical release, just 300 copies. Half were kept in-house as keepsakes. 1 copy was personally packed by Andrew, sealed in a cardboard box alongside a brand new console and a small handwritten note. No formal address label, just 3 words: Gary, 93A Millstone Street. A month earlier, Andrew had received his first message from his father in nearly 6 months. Just 1 line: Can you come home so we can talk? No apology, no sign that anything had changed. Just permission, as if Gary still held the right to allow him back. Andrew didn't reply, not out of anger, just because it wasn't necessary. On a Monday morning, Gary received a large, heavy package. The delivery guy simply said, "Private request, no return address." Inside the box was a high-end gaming console, still sealed, a physical copy of Exit Garage, matte black case with silver lettering, and a white card, handwritten, neat, steady script. "This is the thing you once called useless. Thank you for kicking me out. That night, I became free." No signature, none needed. Back in Boston, in a small studio, with wooden floors and glass doors facing the streetcar line, Andrew sat alone at the end of the workday. The glow of the screen lit his face. No interruptions, no voices behind him. In the corner of the room, the old suitcase rested, still marked with the same scratch on the handle, still unopened since the day he set it down. He didn't plan to use it again, but he wasn't letting it go either. It sat there, like a marker, a quiet reminder. Some nights feel like the end, but really they're just the exit. Some say that if your family can't accept who you are, life will send you an opportunity, but only if you're stubborn enough not to turn back. Andrew didn't win because he hit the lottery. He won because he didn't use the money to prove anything to anyone. He used it to prove to himself that he was still worthy, even if no one stood beside him. The garage, once the place he was thrown out of, became the name that set him free. The suitcase, once packed with 3 years of quiet survival, became a symbol of walking out of the dark. This story isn't just about a lottery ticket. It's about limits, about knowing when to leave, and what you choose to carry with you, anger or a second chance. What about you? If you hit the jackpot the same moment your family turned their back on you, would you stay silent like Andrew, or go back and confront them? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your take. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next gripping story, the quiet turnarounds that hurt but matter.